Okay. In recent weeks, we've seen that Harkness Screens has utilised different technologies that they use every day in several different ways. As a result, Cody, would you feel that Harkness or just the cinema technologies industry can help with the global restart that we will experience in a few months?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of devices that are going to be required for opening cinemas in the next, year while, vaccine is developed. Some of those include face visors for reducing droplet transfers from patrons to staff, keeping everybody safe, protecting the seating is another thing for both open and closed seats, keeping social distance rules in mind while also providing personal protection barriers for between movies when cleaning can be done. Another option is barrier walls to control the movement and enforce social distancing in lobbies and when queuing for movies or popcorn or sodas.
Yeah, and I think that what is key to all this new application and new product is that the material selection, as Cody just mentioned. We need some sort of versatility with the material, and what PVC offers is quite interesting from its mechanical point of view, where you could add a plasticizer, for example, to make it a bit more flexible if you want to do your seat covers. It's got some very good chemical resistance properties. So if you think about application where sanitizing and cleaning are important, this is definitely one of the materials to choose. Likewise, it is waterproof, so it's a very good barrier for liquids, for body fluids. So it's one of the many aspects we can do. Same for optical properties, when you can make transparent material for visors, you can print logo for cinemas. So in terms of application, it really matched the experience that we have, and it's a good candidate for us for the products.
So obviously, from what you've just said, there is capability that will be there to aid some sort of a global restart, whenever that may be. What makes Harkness or, companies that are able to provide PPE or these kind of things well placed to offer these kind of products to those that want it?
I take this one as a base in the north of Italy, where the Covid-19 started to spread out massively in Europe. So we start identifying and try to find solutions for the needs for the restart and just the normal living at beginning of March. So we looked about distancing and protection, PPE, so like aprons, face shield, droplet barrier, and we have still project ongoing just to help. And but we are not only looking at distancing and protection, but we are also looking to maintain that experience that cinema deserve.
Yeah, I think using our experience from 90 years of developing new products, developing coatings, using our PVC knowledge, Harkness can help prevent the spread of COVID the next year while we start reopening where we need to be.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it's nice hearing about the different sorts of products like these we're using around the group, how they can be ideal for use in shops, warehouses, pubs, restaurant, and obviously cinema, which is dear to a lot of the hearts of the people on this call. I mean, for me, it's nice to hear about how we can move forward with that using technology. And I wonder, Richard, do you have an opinion on that? How we could push that with technology?
Yeah, I guess that for cinemas, but also for other businesses as they look towards this future once reopening occurs of the economies around the world. It really falls into several parts. There's obviously the necessity to meet the guidelines that the government set out around the world on social distancing. So that's going to be one consideration. The second consideration will obviously be regaining or earning the consumer or moviegoer trust in this new world. And then, of course, the third element of that is going to be in terms of the overall profitability of the business. So if we look, for example, at cinema, so there's all sorts of elements. So we're seeing exhibitors now talking about opening with 25% occupancy from day one, and I know that, for example, Cinemark said that they can operate profitably on around 20%, 25% occupancy. So cinemas potentially could open with low occupancy levels. But having said that, you've still got other factors to consider. So that is about how you manage people inside of the public spaces, the sanitation programs that you need to put in place. Even down to temperature sensor stations where people can be checked before they come in, the ingress and egress inside of the building. So how do you get people through the lobby, through the concessions, into the auditorium, watch the movie and back out? So there's a lot of uses for technology to really understand not just the placement of people in the auditorium, which I'll come to in a second, but actually to really think about the customer journey itself. If we think about the auditorium, and we listen to the government guidelines, whether that's 1 meter, 2 meters, so you see some of the exhibitors are now talking about, say, for example, 2 seats and then a gap of 2 seats and the row in front being empty and then repeating. But 2 meters may actually mean something a little bit different. And if you think back to the way that cinema auditoriums are built and the way that we as a business analyse auditoriums from a viewing perspective, the one thing that you don't always consider, for example, is the z-axis, the distance kind of in the up and down. So we're as humans, we think about forwards and backwards, left and right, but we never consider the distance down. So that z-axis could mean that, for example, what you might consider to be 1.5 meters, actually the head height is 2 meters. So there's some work to be done there, whether that's with architects, whether that's through some of the simulation work that we do with things like reality capture. So there's a real use for technology in understanding those environments, and if forwarding that into places like retail. What it really comes down to is that ability to maximize the square footage of the retail space. And I know Cody touched on barrier screens, but for example, understanding where to place those in order to maximize the square footage, not just inside of a cinema, but think to a coffee shop, a bar, a restaurant, but be able to use those screens to take that occupancy level from, say, 25 to 30% to 40 to 50% can have a huge benefit on profitability. So I think there's a big role for technology in this new world that we enter.
I'm talking about the world, we have a global footprint, so we are getting information for all around the world, and we are trying just to solve problems and try to understand how things work differently from country to country. Yeah.
And Matt, obviously, aside from the large cinema screens that Harkness provide, you also excel at, the manufacturing of event screens. Do you think that your local pub or community centre or whatever kind of environment where there's going to be a social setting, do you think they could use those types of screens to not only ease people back into the social settings that we've all been away from for a while now, but also to help businesses expand into new areas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as been touched on already, as we've been chatting, people have got to have confidence to come back. They may be involved. To do that will be social distancing barriers, what have you. But once you get there, what are you going to do? So we talk about things, local pubs, community centres, particularly things like community centres. You've sometimes seen small cinema showings. Now, this may become more popular as people have more confidence to go back in. And if you look at those sort of small events, setting up screens very easily, you could set up things using things like Perlux High White Matte Plus, good screen coding technologies to actually work there, and it'll be useful for people. But I think not just on that very small scale, I think it goes a bit deeper than that. To me, I very much imagine products going into things like outdoor cinemas. So as actual cinema companies themselves, our exhibitors, they look to get people in. There might be a halfway stage where they say, well, look, I'm a big multiplex in a retail park. I've got an empty car park. Can I use that and maybe put a screen on the side wall? Can I have an inflated air screen, something along those lines? And again, there's different screen technologies that can work well with those. And I think for those that maybe even don't want to venture out, are there things you can do where technology can help them? I mean, in my opinion, there would be. We hear a lot of people anyway looking at things like premium home cinema, and there are good technologies to do that. Esports is very popular, and again, certain premium gamers, people really wanting a high-end experience, will be looking at, well, can I have a smaller projector at home and project that on a good screen technology? And those things can be done. I think a lot of this is also down to confidence. So I think when people are looking to deploy any new screen surface technology to do different things, they've got to be confident that's going to work for them. So I think one of the things is different, putting that in different environments is sort of safety criteria. So I would say, Richard, I think you've got quite a good handle on that. Did you have any thoughts on, safety considerations for people using these types of technologies?
Yeah, I think in this new world, safety is going to be the big key.
Yeah.
And whether that's just ensuring that message is heard through to the safety of the quality of the product that's going in to keep people safe. I think those are quite important elements. I could conceivably see, for example, in cinema, exhibitors vocally telling their customers the measures that they're putting in place to keep them safe. But people are going to be more concerned about their day-to-day life, and that could even transfer as far as ensuring that the products that they're interacting with, so for example a barrier screen, has the right properties to keep people safe. There's no point having, for example, a material-based screen that somebody coughs or sneezes into and the droplets stay within there and then it passes through the next person that's going through there. So it's about having the right materials. And I know that Laurent's done an awful lot of work in investigating the right materials that could be applicable to that space. So I'll let him jump in on that. But I think that safety element's going to become critical, really.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I think when we develop those products, we try to do works in the background that people might not be aware of, but looking at fire retardant additives, for example, just to make sure the barrier is safe, using antimicrobial additive as well, so you do have some extra protection from droplet and contamination. It's part of the formulation that has to be taken into account when you develop the process. So you look into the design to make sure there's a good feel factor about the product and it does the job that it's supposed to be doing. And then you've got this material aspect where it is safe and it's the right choice for the right product.